Welcome to the video on the weekly check of the Viva. Just to rehash, the Viva has three main functions. It can do resus, therapy and suction. When performing our weekly check, we must ensure that the exterior part of the Viva is nice and clean. This can be done either by using warm soapy water or Defez disinfectant too. When cleaning the cylinder, please be aware of any blood that may have been left over underneath the handle there. Also, when we're checking it, we need to ensure that the cylinder is housed correctly, it is seated in the yoke, it is fully timed, and we need to make sure that the bow-duct washer is seated. Before we commence our checks, we need to turn the cylinder on full. Before we do that, we can open up. We need to check our contents gauge is on 0. And then we would turn the cylinder on fully. And back quarter of a turn. We can also use, inside the cylinder here, inside the Viva set, is a little wheel that can be used to turn it on if we find that one's too hard. Once we've turned it on, we need to ensure that we have enough oxygen. So on the Viva, we have a green area here. We used to look at replacing the cylinder if it got outside of that the green coloured area. Now we don't have to worry about that. We wait until it gets to 10,000 kPa until we need to change the cylinder. Whilst the air is equalising through the Viva, we can remove our auxiliary equipment. Once we've removed the equipment, we need to ensure that the inside of the Viva is nice and clean. So we can ensure that all this area is clean. Once we've left it for a minute, we can then look at turning the Viva off. Taking note of the pressure, we'll now have to wait a further minute and ensuring it doesn't drop any more than 1000 kPa in that time. If it does, we'd first have to vent the air from the system, remove the cylinder from the yoke, check the bow-duct washer and replace if necessary, rehouse, retest. If it fails again, I would suggest contacting your manager to look at getting the set serviced. Whilst we wait for that minute, I can go through a few of the functions of the Viva. The resus head. Resus head can deliver oxygen on resus at about 60 litres per minute, or on patient demand, if the patient was using it, it can use up to 160 litres per minute. Our cylinder here holds a total of 466 litres. The suction jar, which should be securely mounted inside the Viva, has a capacity of 350 millilitres. In 5 seconds we can fill it up to 300 mils. Something we'll have to be careful of if we are doing suction, that we don't overfill it, as the contents would then go through the rest of the Viva. That consumes at about 50 litres per minute, and if a cylinder was full, we would have a continuous use of about 9 minutes doing suction. Therapy. Therapy supplies about 60% oxygen at about 8 litres per minute, and on continuous use we get about 60 minutes on a full cylinder. Now that the Viva has been sitting for about a minute, I can see that we haven't lost any pressure, so we've passed our test. Now we can move on to testing the individual component parts. The first one we start with is the resus head. We ensure by pressing the button that we have airflow out the end. Then we place the end of it onto our palm, and we'll be checking now the pressure relief valve and making sure air comes out the back. That has worked and has passed. We then move on to the therapy side. Where the therapy connects, there's a little nipple down there. We can place a hand over it, turn the therapy on and watch for airflow. The next one is suction. We can tell the suction lever is different to the therapy as it has a nipple on the actual lever itself, so in the dark it makes it easy to identify. We get the suction hose, place it against our thumb, activate the suction, and we've completed our test on all the functions within the Viva. So now that the Viva has passed its test, we've cleaned it, we can look at our auxiliary equipment before we restow it. Auxiliary equipment, we have one suction catheter that's in a sealed bag. We need to check the expiry date on the rear of that. We have two resus heads, an adult and a child, that are in Ziploc bags. These can be cleaned and reused. If we are going to clean them, we use DFairs disinfectant too. 3 therapy masks. We have 2 adult and 1 child. These are a throwaway item. If they have been used, we dispose of them and get some new ones. They must remain in the sealed bag until they are used. 4 OPAs, oropharyngeal airways. The easiest way to remember what colours we have is to think of a traffic lights. White for the line, red, orange and green. Sometimes the orange is yellow, but that's predominantly the colours we have. When we're checking these also have an expiry date on the bit of paper inside. We need to check each one of those to ensure they're within date. These are also a throwaway item, and if they're out of that package, they need to be disposed of and replaced. 5 gloves rolled up in pairs, and finally 6 Bodoc washers in a little vial there. So when rehousing the Oxyviva, we have the gear goes in a specific area. So the suction catheter goes in the lid and can get tucked underneath the suction hose here. One of the adult therapy masks goes underneath the resus head. On top of the resus head goes the 2 resus masks, the adult and the child. They're ready as a package to go if we had to do resus. Our child therapy goes at the back behind the suction jar, and our adult therapy mask goes at the front here, right near the therapy connection, making it quick and easy to use, as the adult one's probably the main one we do use. Please ensure that you don't tear open the bag and connect the therapy line to the nipple there, as obviously that's jeopardising the therapy mask and would have to be disposed and a new one put in. Our Bodoc washers go down near the contents gauge. Our OPAs sit near the suction lever. This keeps our little wheel here free and that area free for when we need to turn the oxygen cylinder on. And finally our gloves, which are probably the first thing that we would need to put on before dealing with our casualty, sit right on the top there. Once we've completed all that, we need to rehouse and close, ensuring we don't pinch the suction hose on the lid. The Oxyviva will then be placed back in the truck ready to go. And also stress that when we do have a replacement Oxyviva sent down, that auxiliary equipment doesn't come with the replacement Oxyviva, and you'll need to do a complete changeover of that equipment into the new Oxyviva. Thanks very much.